Hey everyone, I wanted to share my new framework for self-mastery. So today I was thinking about all the things I've learned and all the trainings I've done and hundreds, if not, 1 or 2 thousand books I've read. And I'm thinking, how do these pieces fit and what do I actually help people with? And so this framework kind of came to me in a few pieces. So that's what I'm going to give you here. It is what I believe is the key, the path, all the principles of it tie kind of everything I've learned together. And there's really two paths here we're going to go down. So I'm going to go over these principles here in just a moment. I'm super excited. If you're wondering why I'm all dressed up, it is about 0 degrees outside and I'm getting ready to go out in the cold and get some groceries. So before I do that, I wanted to share this framework with you that I've never shared with anyone. I would love to hear your feedback, what you think about it, whether you like it, if I'm missing something, if these pieces make sense to you, because for me, they make perfect sense. So I'm going to share that. Let's just do that now. Hold on 1 second. Let me share my screen here. All right. I hope you can see this. So this is what I believe is the self-mastery code. And it's not just self-mastery, it's also self-transcendence. So there's two different sides here. You can see on the left is the transcending the self side. That's what we would call our positive side. And then the other side is descending into self. So we're going to go over what those mean, what these principles are, how they tie together here in this brief video. So transcending, you can even look at the word. It sounds like trance-ending. Breaking the trance that most people are living in to raise their nature from their animal nature into their higher selves. And so I believe this is the path that we all must go down if we want to improve ourselves. And I believe it must be in this order, at least roughly in this order. I don't think you can move ahead without one piece of the puzzle. So the first step into mastering ourselves and really transcending the limitations of our quote unquote self is we must take responsibility for our lives. And that doesn't mean that if something happened to you that it's your fault and you're responsible for it. That doesn't mean that you attracted that. It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that you are responsible for what you are going to do, how you are going to respond going forward. The responsibility is yours and only yours. This is the most important step, the most important framework. Without owning yourself and your life, nothing happens. The alternative is a victim mentality. And you may find there's a little bit of a spectrum here where you can kind of toggle back and forth between these two. In some areas of your life, you may take responsibility. In some areas, you may feel like you're a victim, or you may play that victim card. So the victim is life happens to me. I'm a victim of what people are doing around me. I'm a victim of the economy, of the president, of the weather, which I certainly feel like today. I'm a victim of my life, of my family. Someone that takes responsibility says, I'm going to use what's happened to me. I'm going to find the positive in it, and I'm going to turn that into a benefit. I'm going to find that little seed of opportunity in every setback or failure. I will not work with people. I will not date people. I will not go into business with people that have a victim mentality. That for me is a total deal breaker. You will not be a client of mine if you want to stay a victim, because it won't work. Like nothing changes there. So that's the first step. You must take responsibility for your life. The second step, I believe, is we must find self-awareness. So these lists, you can put the word self in there. So self-responsibility, self-awareness, self-love, and self-acceptance. So self-awareness is understanding all of the, what we call in hypnosis, the parts of ourselves, all of our different ego states. So we must become aware of them so that we can accept them and then change them. I'm going to kind of tie these two principles together. So self-love is great. We talk about that a lot. That's always what we want people to have, is this just self-love and self-acceptance. The problem is most people are very vague. They think they love themselves until you ask about the parts of themselves they've rejected, right? What Jung calls our shadow, Carl Jung. And until you are aware of those shadows, you don't even know you're rejecting them, right? If you have a compulsive behavior and you're not loving and accepting even that part of you, you're not accepting and loving yourself. But you must first become aware of that. You must have this self-awareness. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the parts of me that in the past I've rejected? And we're not at the point where we're accepting them. We're just observing them. We're just becoming aware of them. So is there a part of you that needs validation in certain settings? Is there a part of you that's a people pleaser? Is there a part of you that, you may think you work hard, but maybe you don't work as hard as you think? A lot of people will say, well, I eat healthy. And when you actually look at their diet, they may not eat as healthy as they think. They're not self-aware. This was me for a long time. I certainly ate many healthy things and I did many healthy things, but I also did some things that weren't healthy. But I had this identity. I was leaning on this identity of being healthy, so I was ignoring it. I didn't have the self-awareness to my bad habits. And so without that self-awareness, you can't love and accept yourself. So this is what hypnosis is great for, because often in a normal state of consciousness, we don't look at ourselves from different perspectives. We don't tap into those alternative parts of ourselves, right? And often we can ignore or blind ourselves because the part that is speaking might not be the part that's being rejected. So that's why self-awareness is so key. And that's something we really do and we focus on in therapy and hypnosis. The alternative to that is self-deception. I'm sure you know people who do that all the time. They think they're a great person, and maybe they are, but they totally ignore their negative traits. You'll see this often. People who are very judgmental, they're judging others for what they have in themselves, and they can't even look at it. So you must take responsibility, and then you must become aware of all of those parts of yourself, especially the ones you've rejected, so you can move into loving and accepting them. Again, self-love and self-acceptance means nothing if you're not aware of all of those parts that need love and acceptance. So to love and accept, you must become aware of those parts. And then what we're doing is we're just releasing judgment. We can look at a behavior of ours and say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what the positive intention is behind that, because the subconscious mind always has a positive intention. So you want to love and accept a part of you that you think has a negative behavior. Well, maybe that negative behavior is some sort of cry for help. And when you realize that, you can start to release the judgment. Remember, you can't influence someone and judge them at the same time. You can't influence and change and transcend yourself while you're judging yourself at the same time. So you become aware of these things, and then you find the positive intention and you release judgment to love and accept all of the parts of you. I know this can be a challenge. You must love and accept all of the parts of you. And then, the opposite of that is rejection. And some people have totally rejected parts of themselves, and they try to suppress these behaviors that they have, only to find that in a moment of weakness, these behaviors pop up, right? If someone's an alcoholic, they may be able to just press that down long enough and just ignore that parts of themselves and reject it until one day they're stressed out and the lid pops out, Jack in the Box shoots out, and they become a totally different person because they haven't loved and accepted those parts of themselves. All right. I hope you're with me. Leave me a comment. Does this make sense? Are you kind of seeing a pattern here? Are you seeing why I'm going in this order? The next thing, once we love and accept ourselves, we can start to implement some practices of discipline in our lives. And what is discipline if it's not love for your future self? So when you love your future self, what you're going to do now is going to be a little different than if you weren't thinking about your future self. So we start to implement good eating habits because we love ourselves and accept ourselves. We start to implement good and regular sleeping. We start to implement exercise. We start to implement sitting down and doing the work that we've been ignoring. These are disciplines that without self-love, you cannot do. Let me take that back. You can still be programmed by society to have certain disciplines, but a robot can do that. It's not about being programmed from the outside. It's about programming yourself from the inside for these disciplines. And again, if you're judging yourself or relying on willpower, these disciplines will not work. When you accept yourself and recruit all of the parts of yourself, now we can implement disciplines to make our life better. Whether that's cleaning up after yourself, showing up on time, going to work regularly, whatever these disciplines are. And consider this, disciplines are also boundaries. Boundaries are an expression of self-love. I have a boundary that I'm not going to go X number of days without working out. And it's a habit, it's a discipline for me. And it's so easy to work out because I've trained that in there and I love my future self, right? But if you don't love your future self and you don't have these boundaries, it's easy to slip and let them slide. And so if you're a people pleaser, it's probably because you're not self-aware. You haven't loved and accepted that part of yourself to have the self-worth to say no and set a boundary. That's a lack of discipline. That's a lack of love for your future self. So now we're self-aware. We've taken responsibility. We're loving ourselves. We've got these discipline practices to start to move forward in our life. And this doesn't mean you live a rigid existence. It just means the basic disciplines to improve your life. Now we can focus on development, developing ourselves. And what does that mean? That means developing our skill sets, our knowledge base, our wisdom, setting time aside, having discipline to read, having discipline to study, right? What a gift to your future self. Every book you read now is a gift to your future self. Every seminar you take is a gift to your future self. Right now, I'm the beneficiary of my earlier, younger self investing heavily into education. And now I can have a conversation with someone and know exactly what they're saying, know exactly how to navigate it because I've invested so heavily. And you'll find that when you invest heavily in yourself, your present self in the future will thank you. They will benefit greatly. So you're developing skills, you're developing wisdom, and I think most importantly, you're developing virtues. I think we are here on this earth to develop virtues. That's a whole other story, but if you look at even the hero's journey, someone starts out and they lack virtues, right? They lack certain virtues. They have certain virtues that we relate to, right? Oh, they're kind or they're ambitious, and like we root for them, but we can see they lack certain virtues. So they meet a guide, and this guide has the virtues that our hero wants to embody. And then the virtue goes through the hero goes through the hero's journey. They have all these setbacks, and in those setbacks, they develop and they come out with the virtues that the guide had, right? And so the hero's journey is only, I believe, only a story of developing virtues. And I think our lives are that hero's journey that we're here to find guides to help us develop virtues. So that's what development is. Now, let me go back a step because I forgot sabotage. So if you don't have discipline, if you're not having certain discipline practices, what's the opposite? Well, you must be sabotaging your future self, right? That's what most people call it, is self-sabotage. So if you're not disciplining yourself to certain things that are moving your life forward, you're sabotaging that. Now, there's a balance in life as well. That doesn't mean you can never eat ice cream, right? This is a balance that everyone has to find because sometimes having a treat is a gift to your present self, and that's totally fine. You have to find that kind of spectrum yourself, but I wanted to throw that out there. So now we've got those disciplines in place. We're developing ourselves. And now that we can actually develop ourselves, that strengthens everything above it. So now we have more responsibility in areas of our life, every area of our life. Now we're taking ownership in. We're becoming even more aware of ourselves the more work we do, right? We're loving and accepting parts of ourselves that we continue to find. And we're strengthening our discipline. This is what this development is. It's that whole process. And you're developing these virtues. Now, the opposite of that is people get defensive and they rationalize why they are the way they are. They don't have the humility, which again is a virtue, to examine themselves and to say something isn't working and to work on it. If you don't have humility to say something's wrong or I want something to improve, then there's no development at all. So now you're starting to develop virtues. And with virtues, you become more selfless, right? Patience, generosity, humility. All of these things are less about yourself and more about other people. And there's many virtues. I could write a book on virtues, and someday I promise you I will. But you become selfless. You transcend the self. The self is this distinction we have with our environment where we have the illusion, the trance of separation. As we become more self-aware, we become more self-accepting. We see ourselves in other people, right? then we can accept other people and we start to get that rapport easier with other people. And what is rapport if not this like feeling of connection and oneness? And you're willing to do something for someone who you have rapport with, right? Because it's less about you and it's more about we. So you transcend the self with this process. And of course, the opposite of that is you become more self-serving, right? You can go down that whole descent. You become more about yourself. You become deeper rooted in your programs, in the identification of your body and your race and your history and your beliefs. Whereas on the transcending the self, where we're actually developing ourself, it's less about that. We realize we're this spirit that's connected with all things. And so at Ministry of the Mind, I think what we're doing is this roadmap. How do we take more ownership of our emotions, of our behaviors, of our character, of our lives? How do we become more aware of the parts of ourselves and honest, right? How do we become more honest about who we actually are, where we're at? I know so many people who work so hard in business and they never look at their spending or their budget, right? They're not even aware of that. They think they're making great money, but they lack the even awareness and the discipline and the boundaries to track their spending. Well, are they making progress? Are they developing financially? Usually no. Usually they stay in the exact same place because they lack that awareness. Because sometimes it's hard to look at when we have these flaws, right? But once you look at it, you can accept where you are. Then you can implement more disciplines. Then you can start to develop yourself, right? And it all feeds into this loop. And then you have more money that you can be more generous with, right? So this framework came to me today and I absolutely loved it. And I hope this makes sense to you. I would love to hear from you. And if you were honest and you looked at yourself on the two spectrums here, what would you find? Would you like what you see? Could you honestly look at this and say, you know what? I take responsibility for my life. I am aware of myself. I'm aware of how people perceive me. I'm aware of my strengths and my weaknesses and my compulsive behaviors and my habits. Or are you deceiving yourself? Do you actually love and accept the parts of yourself that may be hard to love and accept? Or do you reject them and ignore them? Do you have disciplines in your life? Or are you sabotaging yourself? Are you actually investing in your future self by developing now? Or are you defending and rationalizing where you are? Are you every day becoming selfless? Or are you becoming self-serving? One of them leads to joy, fulfillment, and satisfaction. I will let you guess which one that is. You probably already know. So again, I would love to hear your feedback. This went a little longer than I thought, but it was just what I was inspired to share today. And I think at Ministry of the Mind, this is the path. These are the things that we work on to improve our lives, improve ourselves, and again, to transcend the self. Let me know what you think. Thanks.